My name is Donna Eyestone, and today what I wanted to talk about are some of the lessons that I've learned using CCCConfer over the years. And I wanted to thank Blaine for letting me be here, but I also wanted to say how much I appreciated being asked to be first. And as I thought about being first, this is what came to mind. How many of you know this person? This is Greg Packer. He's a professional line waiter. Have you ever heard of that?
No. He has lots of business on Black Friday, right?
And so he's the guy that goes and sits at the Apple store to buy your iPhone for you if you're too busy to stand in line for 2 days. And he makes about $250 a day being a professional line waiter. So that's one way to be first. Or instead of being Greg Packer, you can actually try to lead the pack. And this is the Burlington, Mass. Mall release of the iPhone. People are having fun. They've formed a community for no other reason that they're standing in line together. And so I'm very hopeful that today we can be this kind of community. And I think we already are. So one of the things that I've learned from teaching with CCCConfer was demonstrated on my first slide, which is to have some music playing when people are entering the room. And I do it in my on-campus classes as well, because it gets rid of any kind of awkwardness. And more importantly, it helps me set the volume on my computer so that when I play my video clip, I know what the volume is going to be, so I can anticipate that. So it solves two problems at once. It does it both online and in face-to-face. So I always start with some music.
So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them as we're going. And in fact, that little hand-raising thing is a really nice one because it actually it helps me. It makes a nice ping so I can see it and hear it. So where we're at in our process of making a podcast is we've gone through the green sections, planning, pre-production storyboards, writing a script or preparing an outline, and testing recording equipment. We did that in the preparation week. And then yesterday we recorded our audio, we edited the audio, and then we compressed it to make it an MP3 so that it's a small file that everybody can play. So, and that file you can use wherever you want. So if you want to take that and post it as an attachment to a discussion posting, you can. If you want to, you could, theoretically, if it's small enough, you could email it to somebody. You could put it in your online course. You could put it on a web server and link to it from a web page. So you have a complete thing that you can use in many ways. Now, the way that we're going to focus on today is to use it as a podcast. And we want to take into consideration all of those things that were in that prep week content, all of the good reasons to do a podcast. So there's plenty of great other ways to use audio. And so you really want to make a podcast if you're going to repeatedly be delivering content over time. And so that's where we are right now.
So it might have been a little long-winded. This was a long course that we were involved in. But I like to tell people where they've come from and where they are right now and where we're headed. Also important to do face-to-face or online. I find it even more true online because when you're online, you know that all your students are sitting at the thing that they love that is the biggest distraction monster out there. And so it gives people a way to kind of focus and look at on what they're doing, like hopefully they're here, they're at your session, and where they can get to. What's the benefit for them for being in this session right now? The other thing that I try to do that's not in this clip is tell them how long it's going to be, and then respect that. So if you say how many people have been to a 1-hour meeting that's gone to 2 hours, right, is to just say you're going to do it for an hour and then do it for an hour. And if you don't cover it in an hour, come back and do it, set up another time and do it again. So it's not the end of the world to not finish the agenda, but it's more important, at least to me, to end on time, especially if you're trying to get attention of busy people that are taking an online class because they got lots of things to do and it's hard to find that 1 hour anyway. So for my agenda, I want to kind of go through the steps that I go through when I give a session. And so the next thing up for us is to talk about how do you get people to participate with you? Well, there's a lot of ways that there's a lot of tools built into Confer that can help get students participating, but asking people to participate, like, it's so simple. It's so simple, but to ask them, and if they ask a question, let them interrupt you. If you have them there at a specific time, it's not because you want to lecture at them. If you want to lecture at them, you could pre-record that and send it out to them. But to let them interrupt. But if you're going to let them interrupt, to manage it, to make sure that you have control of it. If they're going to use the little hand-raising tool, that it goes up and it stays up. So then you're just waiting. You wait when it's convenient for you to answer the question. And sometimes I think that doing voting and polling can be a little bit hackneyed, but there are times when it's very crucial information. And this is a clip that I want to play. This is somebody else's clip.
You're sitting in a room with instructional designers, graphic designers or technical developers, teachers, trainers, or training managers. Again, use the A, B, C, and D. And then as soon as it's on C and D, the letters start to pop up. Okay, a lot of instructional designers. Okay.
So it's kind of nice to know. Now earlier, before, this was a live session that I was in, and I was just in the session, and they had put up a nice map at the beginning and had people pinpoint where they were on the map, which is also another nice technique to kind of find out where your audience is located. Very ineffective in this particular presentation, because she put up this nice map of the world, and pretty much everyone was in the Bay Area. and so what you just, you know your students probably, and you probably have a fairly good sense about whether you're going to have international people participating in your call or not. So put up a map that's the right scale for your for your audience. But these polls can be really effective. Using the phone. Talking to yourself is a skill. And obviously you're not talking to yourself. There's people on the other end. They're listening. They might be interrupting. But a lot of the times it feels like talking to yourself. It feels that way for me, because for me I teach all 100% online. So my office is my desk at home. So sometimes I tape pictures of people above my computer. I just tape it right to the monitor so that I am talking to somebody. But it's really a skill to be able to sit there on the phone and know that people are listening without getting immediate feedback, especially if you've put yourself in lecture mode, where you've said, I don't want to be interrupted on the phone, and the only way your students are participating with you is by the chat room. then you're kind of acting as moderator and instructor at the same time. Did you have a question? Okay. So you can get familiar with this if you just want to go into the, you can just practice. You just go up to the wall and you start talking. You have the phone up, and it's a good skill. I mean, it sounds silly, but it's really true. Assume a slight lag. So if you're going to have people that are both on the telephone and on voice over IP, you have to gauge that. Like, is it 2 seconds? Is it 1 second? Is it a half a second? However small of a time it is, it feels a lot longer. And so when you have people, you'll often have this situation where what's happening are you're saying something and you've asked somebody a question, and then somebody starts talking, and then another person starts talking, and then a third person starts talking all on top of that. And so there's a certain getting comfortable with that you can help moderate. Avoid speakerphones. If you're the presenter, you can't do it. Your students, if they want to listen and put you on speakerphone, that's fine. But if you're going to be talking for an hour, don't put yourself on a speakerphone. And use a headset if you're going to be talking for an hour. Because, so the other day, coming here, I had a 10 o'clock meeting, and I had an 11:15 plane flight. So I was in the airport on my CCCConfer meeting, and I had my cell phone, and I had my computer, and there I was, and I'm like, oh, if I do this, my phone hangs up. And so I couldn't do this, and so I had one hand to type in the chat room, like a headset. It's really worth it.
I wanted to start this morning by just saying how cool it was for me to just, I went to bed last night, and I woke up this morning, and there were all these podcasts posted in the course, and I'm like, wow, or all these first episodes, posted in the course, and I thought, oh, this is so exciting. And so it was really neat to be able to play them in the morning. And what I wanted to do this morning to start off is just sort of get your take on it. How are you feeling? How'd the recording go? Was it better than you expected? Harder than you expected? What would you do differently next time? So I'm going to pass the mic over to you all.
And now wait.
Well,
something good happens.
I think that the recording process came out better than I expected on this little handheld recording machine. And it just took a lot of time, but I had to do a lot of things twice, and the second time things went much smoother. So I think with practice, like anything else, this whole process will go smoother. But I did have some questions about backing up, which I may bring up later. I'll let other people speak.
I actually thought that the process of editing was in some ways easier than I thought. And I could see that the more you use, one uses Audacity, it gets much better, and it was pretty flexible. It is harder than I thought to record myself and get through it and listen to it. So that does definitely take practice. All in all, for the first time, and considering we just started this yesterday, I think it went really well.
So application sharing is mostly how I use CCCConfer. I have to, almost inevitably, I am teaching somebody how to use a computer application. And so I have to, planning. I have all of my documents that I'm going to use open, and in my case, loaded in my doc. You can put them in your little programs bar so that they're there. I don't want to waste my 50 minutes that I have with the student trying to find the file it is that I wanted to show them. So so I have them open, and I have the application open. right? So in this case, I was teaching Photoshop, and I had a bunch of Photoshop documents open so that I could just use it. I didn't have to wait for the application to load. And some of you were asking me earlier this morning about, oh, do you use Camtasia? Do you do this? Do you do this? You know, all of those things are great, except that I spend a lot of time watching people's movies where they're opening the application, or they're waiting and watching a progress bar go by. Too much time wasted. So use the time efficiently. The other thing about application sharing is when you're sharing part of your screen with somebody, that's pretty bandwidth intensive. And so when you start loading pages and moving stuff around, the moving is painful because it takes every pixel on the screen is changing. And so when you have to move a window from here over to here because it wasn't quite set up right, it's another delay. And so what I do before I start my session is I just go in and I open up all the windows so that I know when I click a box where the window that asks me to confirm is going to show up on the screen. And it's going to show up in the area that I'm sharing instead of off where I'm not sharing. And so you can get pretty efficient when you do this to be able to show. In this case, I wanted to be able to show not only the iTunes interface, so I wanted to show how things showed up in the store. I wanted to show them XML code that was used to generate that text. And I needed to be able to show them the list of songs that were showing up here. So I had a lot to show them, and I didn't want to keep flipping back, because when you're flipping around windows, it's really hard for people to follow. People who are not driving the computer don't really know. And so you need to know. You need to know where you're sharing on your screen. And so sometimes on a Mac, I'll always share the desktop so that my menus show up and all of that. You can share just an application if you want, which can be helpful. But if you're sharing a region, mind that yellow line. That yellow line is a subtle little indicator that says this is where you're sharing. Clean your desktop. Same is true when I go into a classroom and present. I don't want people seeing all my business on my computer, right? I don't need to have pictures of people on my desktop. I don't want to have anything that distracts people from learning the task that I'm giving them. If I want to share a picture of my daughter with my students, I'll post that. I'll do it as an intentional act that says, here's what I'm sharing of myself with you. I don't have my cluttered computer reveal this kind of information. And a lot of times, I do a lot of moderating of desktop seminars, which is a real privilege to be in a position where you're not presenting and you get to just be in the background. That's awesome. And it's awesome to have a moderator if you're presenting, so that you can have somebody that handles a lot of the maintenance in the background. But a lot of what I see is people will start sharing a region, and the controller goes to the side. And so then you're seeing the presenter's chat room window that may have private messages that were sent between the instructor and one of the students that then show up that get shared to everyone. So just be careful of what you're sharing. When I do a lot of sessions that I know are going to be long, meaning longer than 20 minutes, I will intentionally design them so that I can switch from my application sharing back to a slide. Like, first we've recorded our audio. And then we go from the PowerPoint right into application sharing. We record some audio. Then we go back to the PowerPoint that says, now save your file. And so what that gives you is this nice little index to the archive. So you get these tick marks that appear at every slide. So it gives students a way to not have to watch your entire 1-hour presentation again when they really just needed the 10-minute part that was about compressing, and I didn't quite know where that was. They can just literally go forward, 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 and see the slides. And then talk through what you're doing and share what you've pre-baked. So a lot of demoing for me is pre-baking. Is like, mine's going to work perfectly. When I say I'm going to use this tool in Photoshop, it's going to be perfect. I'm going to know exactly what settings to have set. And so when students go home and then they're doing it on their own, and it's not like that, they're frustrated, right? Because I just gave this great demo. And so I always tell people what I have pre-baked. And I usually explain it while I'm giving the presentation.
What's happening is it's downloading, but it's only downloading this one episode. Sure. All the others I have to manually get. All the back issues I'd have to manually get. But everything from this day forward will automatically come to me. And so this is sort of the beauty of podcasting. This is like, oh, that's how it all works. So in your iTunes preferences, I'm going to click podcast. And what's going to happen is every hour, my iTunes is set up to look every hour. Now, that's every hour that iTunes is open, well, my computer's on, iTunes is open, and I'm connected to the internet. It's going to go out and look at all of these channels that I'm subscribed to, and it's going to look and say, is there anything new? Anything new? And so it's just going to keep going through all of them for me to see if anything's new. If it finds anything new on the ones that I'm subscribed to, mine is set to download the most recent ones. And so what that means is it did that, right? It downloaded just the most recent episode of this basketball one, and it's showing me grayed out all of the back episodes if I want to get them. But anything from here on out will just automatically come, because when they publish something else, say,
I'm going to just go forward on this. It's another example.
This is going to be what I would call a full screen image that I want to use in a PowerPoint presentation. And then I can take my tool and I drag it over my image, and you'll see that I get a selection box, and it's in the same relationship. It's in this 640-480 relationship all the time, so I can't select a long, skinny portion. I'm forced into that ratio. And when I let go of my mouse button, I have a selection. You'll see the middle part is what's selected, and these running ants are the edges, the boundary of my selection, and then the darkened part is what's not selected. I can move that selection after the fact, so if I wanted it to just be a little higher or I wanted it to just be a little lower, I can do it however I want. Once you get the selection how you want it, you can just press the return key, and it's cropped that image for you.
So all of those
so
keystrokes.
Now I have an image, and the image size is 640 by 480 because that's what I said I wanted at a resolution of 72.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows what you're typing really, in the background. They can't see your mouse. They can't see that when you're in a classroom either if you're doing the same kind of demo. And so, and you'll notice I edited it and it chopped off here, but the window, the image size window came up and was visible seamlessly. Just, worked, great. And when you do it, it's almost, for me, it's the same skill that I have of technical writing, giving these kinds of presentations where you just have to realize, what is it that I know that I'm not telling you? How is it that those things that were raw now are cooked? Like, how did that happen? What was the temperature of the oven? How long did you put it in the oven? So those things really matter, especially remotely. So chat is my favorite feature because, and especially now, it's getting even better now because you know that people are trying to do 10,000 things. How am I going to get my student to pay attention to me and my presentation instead of checking Facebook, checking their email that's coming in and beeping at them on their computer, doing whatever, vacuuming the floor because they're on mute? Who knows? Who knows what they're doing, right? So chat, I find, to be a great response to this because you can get students talking. And so at One, what we do is we have moderators for all of our desktop seminars. And what we try to do is we try to copy all of the URLs that are in somebody's presentation beforehand, and I just paste them into a document so that as they're talking about things, I can paste them as URLs live into the chat room window. So they're a clickable entity right from there. So if you're going to do that, make sure you put the http://. If you want it to be a live link, you put the whole thing so they can just click it. Gets saved with the archive. So it's really a valuable place to put this sort of supplemental information. Hard to do if you're presenting it by yourself without a moderator. Unless you've been your own pre-baked moderator, where you've taken them and you've put them in and it's just an easy copy and paste.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is that considered a TA, your moderator? Because you're still the presenter, correct?
I don't have a TA, so I do it myself, but you could have a TA do it. You could have a student do it.
That's what I was thinking.
You could have any student do it, and if you assign that student that role, whew, it's the same. I mean, then they're invested.
Yes.
Okay, and so people will use it as a way of taking notes. You could say, I would like you, Lori, to now take notes on everything I'm doing and put it in the chat room. And then other students can chime into that chat room or not, but it provides a nice index, and you can, and the chat is saved also with the archive, and so you can go through and sort of see where you are.
Great idea. Do you do that mostly all the time, Donna?
I do it all the time, and even when I'm a participant in somebody else's meeting, I am like the active chatter, like, because you know what? Because I know I have found I can make a huge difference in somebody else's presentation. I can make somebody else who's presenting in CCCConfer a better presenter if I've never met them and I wasn't even invited to their meeting.
Yeah. Oh,
you can just go in and start, be engaged.
Yeah.
Being engaged, and you know when you have an engaged student in your class, the class is different. It's the picture at the beginning, right? You can sit in the line and wait like that, or if you have students that are active, I mean, my experience is I got to get them right away. Man, if it starts out bad, I could like set myself on fire and it's not enough. Like, it's not enough. And so, but if I can be really active at the beginning of a session or at the beginning of an online course and set that tone right away,
so
it stays. And so the last thing I want to talk about is archiving. I think that having an archive is, for a lot of sessions that I do, one of the most important parts of having a session. Because I would like to be able to reuse it if possible. And so the first step is to remember to start recording. It's an important one. If you want an archive, remember to hit record. Otherwise, you won't have an archive, and you'll be sad. Like, here was this awesome presentation, and I didn't archive it. And so at One, we do, One does probably 4 desktop seminars a week in our active sessions. And so we've got 4 hours a week of conferencing that we're doing. And right now, all of our archives have all of the housekeeping stuff on the archive. You've lost me, you're gone. Like, I'm not watching an archive if I have to sit through even 2 minutes of housekeeping that happened for people that were there live. Not interested. So start the archive after you've done whatever housekeeping you needed to do. My personal preference is, for my own stuff, I don't do any housekeeping. 0. I don't teach people how to use the tools. I don't tell them what they need to do or how they need to do it. I teach technology. Part of what they're coming to me for is to learn how to use tools, and this is just another tool. And so I don't teach them how to do it. They can, A, figure it out. If they can't figure it out, I'll tell them. But I'll tell them in a way that has everything to do with the class that I'm teaching. Okay, well, let's try doing application sharing, and I'm going to share my desktop. And I'm going to ask you to get control over this cursor, and how you do that is you go here and you do this, and then it changes. So I have it happen in line with my lesson, rather than telling people how to do a poll, how to answer a poll when it's pretty obvious, number one, and I may not actually do it, right? Like I don't want to spend 30 seconds at the beginning of my session telling people how to answer poll questions and then find that I never get to that part of my presentation and I've wasted that time and effort. Watch your own archives. Painful sometimes, but it's really good. And I'm a big lurker. I don't know why, but I mean, I work at home alone most of the time. And so sometimes I could listen to NPR or something else while I'm working. Or I could just go and see what you guys have archived publicly. And so I just start them and I turn them on and I put the screen and I do what I'm doing. I listen to it as though it's the radio. And it's awesome. It's really a great way to like get tips and find out what people are doing, and you can listen to meetings with important people, and it's like, you know, you just go through and find what you want. Use Publish. Have you guys ever used Publish? Publish is great. We'll
spend some time doing that.
Okay, Publish is really great because what it lets you do is take your CCCConfer archive and make it into portable media. So it converts it into an MPEG-4 that you could then podcast. You could put it on your web page. You could put it in your online course. You can do anything with it. It makes it separate from CCCConfer. It gives you your media. And what's cool is you get transcripts with it. If you've requested captioning, your captions come. You can have them in a bunch of different ways. The captions it's really worth trying out. It's very easy to do. It's neat.
What do you pay for it?
Free?
No, it's just part of Confer.
It's part of Confer.
Yeah, just ask us for it.
And then the last and newest step is that you could take that media and you could put it on our new 3C RSS server, which what we've got is, let's say, you know, your example of somebody taking the archives of a class and making it available to students as an independent study is great. Imagine if what you could do is take your archives, organize them however you want. You can slice them and dice them, you can leave them as they are, and then you could podcast them. And so that students could subscribe to your podcast and you could feed it up, or they could already be there. You have a podcast. So with 3C RSS, and I hope maybe there'll be some time to show it, you can now create a podcast of that without having to write your own XML. So anybody who took my class is already jumping for joy. But it's free server space, it's reliable, it's backed up. You don't have to deal with your own campus's restrictions about whether they want to host your podcast or they'll let you FTP or any of that. Yeah.
You also pop that up on iTunes University.
You could pop it up on iTunes. You can do it. You can put it anywhere. It becomes yours. It doesn't become dependent on. You could take it and burn it on DVDs, and you could give the DVDs out to your students instead of selling them a book.
Or you could do both. Yes. Because if you put it on 3C RSS, there's an option to also index it on iTunes. So, yeah, we're going to have to demonstrate that at some point.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And so that's sort of, for me, that's the whole process that I go for, from starting through archiving. And every step of that way for me has been a revelation. Like, I have learned something about teaching just by using this tool. And really from what the archives are so valuable to see them, whether your own or somebody else's. It's you know, fun. Students seem to really love it. And for me, I love the buzz. I love generating the buzz. Like, I just want people to be interested in what they're doing. And Confer helps me get people interested because they get a little bit of sense of who I am. And by seeing and hearing who I am, they're better able to read my online course. So when they read the materials that I've written, they know the tone of voice to read them in. They know that I'm not like coming down and saying, you must do this. Like, I just want people to try stuff. And it's been a really powerful tool to have audio available to me for my students. And so this is my tagline. I say this to everyone now. With CCCConfer, every student has a front row seat. And so I think about a former podcasting student of mine who was teaching people how to do natural hoof trimming on horses. And she was having a hard time doing this because the horse was getting nervous with all these people crowded around and people in the back couldn't see and the barn floor was wet and all this. And so CCCConfer eliminates all of that. There's not this looking over, I can't see the lab experiment. It's there. Everybody gets to go. It's not distance education. It is closer education.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yes.